Alright, well, there's something we have to talk about. I'm just going to apologize in advance. You might be upset with me. I'm just gonna come out and say it. I don't want you to stall. My beard trimmer broke. So I'm gonna be scruffy for a little bit. Until I figure out a replacement. I've pre-recorded at this point a bunch of videos. The next few videos you see will all be pre-recorded, so they should be at about this length. I know my beard trimmer broke because I went to shave last night to trim, and this is the result. Which is the same facial hair that I had. So, yep. It's going to be difficult for me for a little bit. Please send positive thoughts and prayers, because, yeah, I do not like when it's this length. This length is okay, but it's the upper limit of okay. After this, it becomes difficult. Anyway, excuse me. Anyway, okay, so, today they announced that there are, the next VGC rule set is public. That's not a sentence. That there are the next VGC, whatever. Whatever, okay? I haven't spoken to another human in a while, except for my roommate. Anyway, actually, I just got off a call. Anyway, whatever. They announced that all Gigantamax Pokemon are going to be legal in Season 4 of VGC. So there's a couple interesting things about this. Starting May 1st, which is in about a week, and going till June 30th, which is in about 2 months, all Gigantamax Pokemon are now legal. So what are the additions? This is from SarahB.net. Charizard, already had, whatever. Here's some new ones. Machamp, that's new. Gengar, that's new. Garbodor, that's new. I think these are all old. And then Copperajah and Duraludon. So, they've added a bunch of new Gigantamax Pokemon. And by a bunch, I mean only 5. So, Series 3 saw Series 1, there was no Gigantamax. Wait, Series 1 was there Gigantamax? I don't remember. But anyway, Series 3, they added a ton of Gigantamax, the bulk of them. And now they've added these final 5. So I thought it could be interesting to go and talk about these Pokemon a bit. I didn't really want to do like a tier list video because there's only 5 of them, so it felt kind of silly. But I will go through each of these individually and give you guys my thoughts, and probably, yeah, what most people would expect. So let's see. First of all, let's talk about Machamp. So Machamp has 3 good abilities: Guts, No Guard, and Steadfast. Does Steadfast block Intimidate? I don't think so. Okay, there's 2 good abilities. Guts and No Guard. No Guard was originally Machamp's signature ability. It means that accuracy is not relevant when it comes to Machamp. Yeah, people, like, basically, no moves targeting Machamp or being launched from Machamp will have accuracy checked. So, there are advantages and disadvantages of this. No Guard means that you will always get hit with inaccurate moves from your opponent, so they can safely go for moves like Hydro Pump or Thunder or Fire Blast or Hurricane or whatever, or Will-O-Wisp, and be sure to hit you if you are No Guard. However, the benefit of this is you can run moves like Stone Edge and Dynamic Punch, which Stone Edge people use anyway, but they shouldn't because that's really risky. And Dynamic Punch people would never use without No Guard, but yeah, it allows basically these moves that are, higher risk, higher reward to ignore the risk factor thanks to No Guard. So, I don't know. I think for that reason it's interesting. Guts is also a good ability. People have run Guts Machamp before. You can run Flame Orb Machamp with Close Combat, or does it get Close Combat? Let's find out. Does it get Close Combat? Okay, so Close Combat Guts Machamp is very strong. Before we talk about the moves, though, I do want to talk about the stats. They're actually quite good. A good base HP stat, a very good attack stat, a good base defense stat, a good base special defense stat, and a not great speed stat. Combined to make Machamp, I think, a pretty interesting Pokemon. Machamp has won the World Championships in 2015. I would now tell you to go watch my reaction video where I reacted to that. However, I corrupted the file, so you can't watch it because I bumped the mic or something, and I knocked something on the mic, and it ruined the file. So you can't watch me react to Machamp winning Worlds, but it did win the World Championships in 2015. Albeit in the senior division, but that still counts, in my opinion. Definitely still counts. Especially when you're talking about viability of Pokemon, I think it definitely should not be discounted. So, let's go over what we've talked about so far. Machamp has good bulk and a good offensive stat, with its high base attack stat. And in addition to that, it has 2 good abilities. So you have a lot of things you can do with Machamp. Now let's talk about the moves, because Machamp's moves are actually pretty interesting. Wide Guard, not as good this generation as it was last generation, it looks like, or at least not as good this year as it was last year, I would say. However, here's some interesting things. It gets Knockoff, and Knockoff, if you're a singles player, you might be questioning why I am pausing at knockoff right now, because lots of Pokemon get knockoff, right? However, the thing is that lots of Pokemon only get knockoff via transfer, and you can't use transferred Pokemon from past generations, for example, generations with move tutors, in VGC 2020. So, in the knockoff list, we can actually just take a look at it right now, because I think this could be valuable. I'll zoom in a little more, guys. I'm sorry. I forgot that you guys prefer it to be larger on the screen. The knockoff list is Machamp, Sirfetch'd, Ludicolo, Sableye, Crawdon, Drapion, Mandibuzz, Salazzle, Rillaboom, and Sirfetch'd, and then a couple others, Kingler, Shuckle, Obstagoon, Pelipper, Gardevoir, Gallade, Swoobat, Crustle, Chinchino, Escavalier, Ferrothorn, Dekidui, Passimian, Thievul, Centiskorch, oh, yeah. So, basically, it's not that many Pokemon, and a lot of Pokemon on here, like Sableye and Ludicolo, and Salazzle, and Gardevoir, and Pelipper, you would never run knockoff on, and then a lot of these Pokemon you just wouldn't use, like, Drapion you shouldn't be using, Mandibuzz isn't super common, Salazzle falls in that boat, Kingler you could use because of this Gigantamax form, but like whatever, Shuckle you wouldn't normally run an attacking move on, or at least knockoff isn't like doing what you need it to do there, Gallade isn't very common, Swoobat you wouldn't be using knockoff on, Crustle you wouldn't use, Chinchino you could use, but it's not very common, so like basically the good knockoff users are like Obstagoon, Centiskorch, Passimian, Dekidui I'm gonna count, I think Dekidui is legit, Ferrothorn, Escavalier, Rillaboom, Mandibuzz maybe, and Machamp. So basically, and out of everything I listed, only Ferrothorn is common. And yeah, only Ferrothorn is common. The rest I'd say are like mid to low commonality. Like Centiskorch Stagion built a cool team with, but I don't think he ran knockoff. I'm almost positive he didn't run knockoff, although I could be, actually he may have run knockoff, I'm not actually sure. But I don't think he did. I don't know. Obstagoon is like, has potential, but not a lot of usage right now. Passimian, Stagion also used, to win a tournament, but, it's not that common. Dekidui isn't used right now very much. Ferrothorn is used, that's the biggest one. Escavalier has some usage. But yeah, basically it's one of the best moves in the game, and it's one of the best moves in the format. The reason that it's not used very much is just because the users aren't used very much for the most part. And even if the user is used, like, most Ferrothorn won't run knockoff unless they're Assault Vest, which granted a lot of Ferrothorn are Assault Vest, but we've seen actually Iron Defense Body Press popping up, so that means that they wouldn't run knockoff on that. Basically, long story short, it's an amazing move. For those of you who don't know, it's a 65 base power move if the target doesn't have an item, and it's a 97 base power move if the target does have an item, and it removes the item. And in a metagame like VGC 2020, it's the first time since knockoff became good that, that everything has to have an item that can be knocked off. For those of you who don't know, in past generations, certain items like Mega Stones and Primal Orbs and Z Crystals couldn't be knockoffed, and so they also wouldn't take advanced damage from knockoff. So, for example, if I had like a Insinium Z Incineroar, I could always switch it into a knockoff if I predicted that. And that way I wouldn't lose an item on my team, because losing 1/4 of your items can be bad. Like, especially in a metagame like, well, in any metagame, losing an item can be kind of bad, especially like when you are relying on your item to do things. You can lose recovery or a choice item, or power. Yeah, so basically there's people run items for, you know, they're pretty important to the metagame, so losing your item stinks. So one of the ways that knockoff was one of the best moves in last generation, but it felt a little bit more balanced because you had some Pokemon that at least could take the hits. It was still very good, but yeah, you could have some Pokemon that you could switch in and not lose your item. However, in 2020, there's no items that are commonplace that can't be knocked off, and so if you have a Pokemon with knockoff, you can remove any item. And like, if you knock off and you haven't knocked off already, and the opponent still has all their items, realistically, you're going to take an item from their team, and that's really, really valuable. So long story short, having a fighting type with knockoff, this differentiates it, in my opinion, from Conkeldurr. Whereas Conkeldurr is stronger, like with Iron Fist and Drain Punch, and it has Mach Punch as well. That's a big selling point. Machamp gets knockoff, so I think that's interesting. Other moves, Dynamic Punch is really relevant. 100 base power, no missing, no drawback, fighting type move that confuses. Now, Confusion's not as broken as it used to be. It's still very strong, though. A 1 in 3 chance to not confuse is really significant, in my opinion. So you cannot underestimate Dynamic Punch. And having, yeah, like a no drawback fighting type move that's 100 base power and confuses is really strong. It's like, if there weren't accuracy in the game, I think Dynamic Punch would be maybe the best fighting type attack. Because like, what, you're gonna switch in your Togekiss to take it? Sure, but now your Togekiss is confused, and like, if you fail an attack, that could cost you the game in certain cases. And yeah, like, I don't know. I think Confusion's a broken status. maybe not broken because they didn't nerf it, but very, very good. And it's not, like, you never want to be letting your opponent confuse you any more than they're able to. And so a move like Dynamic Punch is really strong. Now let's look at its other moves. So it gets really good coverage moves, Fire, Ice, and Thunder Punch. So we've got strong, coverage moves here. Dig, it probably gets better stuff than that. Rock Slide is good. I'm sure I'm not missing anything. Light Screen's good, but you wouldn't run it on Machamp most of the time. Helping Hand is interesting. Helping Hand, in my opinion, is definitely interesting. Some more Dark-type moves, some more Rock-type moves. Cross Poison for Fairies if you wanted. You could definitely do that. Stomping Tantrum. Low Kick, Flamethrower, Earthquake. There's a better fighting type move, or ground-type move than Dig. Fire Blast is weird. I didn't know it got Fire Blast. Encore, that's new. Okay, so you could run Encore Machamp if you wanted. Poison Jab, there's another Poison-type move. Stone Edge, that's a big one. Heavy Slam, that's a big one. Darkest Lariat, High Horsepower, Throw Chop. So basically, and let's look at the bag moves as well. Bullet Punch is really important, I think. Yeah. So, I'm just curious. Okay. So in terms of moves, it gets a lot. It gets, like, mostly good offensive moves. Stone Edge never misses, another 100 base power move that has higher crit rate, so that's relevant. Heavy Slam and Bullet Punch are both Steel-type moves, and Poison Jab as well. Is a move that can hit Fairy-type Pokemon, which Machamp would struggle with. And it also gets High Horsepower, which can be used to raise Machamp's special defense if you Gigantamax, which is what we're talking about. What's the base max power? 130. Okay, cool. So, basically, where does this leave us? Machamp is a Pokemon with very good stats, okay? A really good ability in No Guard. That's the one that I most likely would use myself. The Guts has a place as well, but I personally like No Guard. And really good coverage moves. And Dynamic Punch, Knockoff, Bullet Punch, Stone Edge, and then other options as well, like High Horsepower, Heavy Slam, Poison Jab, Cross Poison, etc. Now let's talk about the very last thing we have to talk about, which is Machamp's Gmax move. What move gives you 100 base power? Wait a second. I thought it capped at... I thought that it capped at... Doesn't make any sense. What fighting type move is 100 base power for Gmax Machamp? It shouldn't be anything stronger than 120 here. Because according to Cerebi... What the heck? I don't know. I don't know. Okay, I don't know what 100 base power move Machamp gets. Max move Machamp gets. But yeah, that's interesting. Anyway, so max Dynamic Punch is weaker than regular Dynamic Punch. We just saw that the max move base power was 90 rather than 100 of the regular move. However, what Gmax Machamp does is its Gmax Chi Strike raises the chance of critical hits. Now, what does that mean? The way that critical hits work is every move has a 1 in, I think, 26, 25, 22, 1 in 20-something chance to get a critical hit. However, there's 3 ways you can raise your crit chance. The first is via, there's 3 stages of critical hits, okay? +1, +2, +3, and then +0, which we just talked about. At +1, all moves have a 1 in 8 chance of getting a critical hit. So a move like Stone Edge crits 1 out of 8 times. At +2, all moves crit 50% of the time, and at +3, all moves crit 100% of the time. What Gmax Chi Strike does is it passes the focus energy status to both you and your partner, which increases your crit stage by +2. So, for example, if you paired Gmax Machamp with Super Togekiss, without Scope Lens, all moves would 100% crit. If you gave Machamp a Scope Lens, all moves would crit 100% of the time. Gmax Tree Strike with no other item and just using regular moves, without Stone Edge, just play Gmax Tree Strike with a Citrus Berry and Close Combat. 50% crit rate on everything. Until you switch. And on your partner as well. 50% crit rate at least. Critical hits are relevant here because they ignore stat drop. So, at first I thought Machamp might be worse because, Gigantamax Machamp might be worse than Dynamax Machamp because you lose the attack boost from from Max Knuckle. However, critical hits ignore your own stat drops and your opponent's stat boosts. So, it doesn't matter if your opponent intimidates you 3 or 4 times because you're critting every move with certain sets. I think for this reason, Gigantamax Machamp is actually pretty good. I wouldn't put it in S tier. I don't think I'd put it in A tier. Well, personally, if it was if it didn't I would probably say I think this Pokemon has potential to be A tier. However, realistically, it's probably a B tier mon. Like, it has a lot of potential, I think. It's very dangerous for a number of reasons, but it's not like Lapras where it's very apparent like how good it's going to be. It's like we're going to have to wait and see. But I personally have a lot of faith in Machamp. I think it could do very well. I could be wrong. I could definitely be wrong, but that's my opinion. I don't know. I just think it's a very interesting Pokemon, and there's a lot of potential applications you can do here. And when you consider pairing it with Togekiss and giving a Togekiss 100% crit rate without an item, without using your item, I think that's kind of valuable. So, yeah, and it's not a Pokemon that's like bad outside of Gigantamax as well. Like, you could definitely bring it and not Gigantamax it. In terms of items, if you give it Scope Lens, you'll always crit, and if you give it, once you're set up, you'll always crit. And you could also have 50% chance on Stone Edge, without doing anything else, like just without even Dynamaxing, Gigantamaxing and attacking. So, Scope Lens is an option. You could also run Assault Vest. I think Assault Vest makes a lot of sense as well, bolstering Machamp's special defense and making it super bulky. So, yeah, I have a lot of faith in Machamp. That took longer than I expected. Okay, moving on. Let's talk about Gengar. So Gengar is a Pokemon that has already had a bit of success in VGC 2020. There was a team that was popular that used it. Gengar's strength lies in its typing and its stats. Its ability is Curse Body, which is unfortunate. Rest in peace, Levitate Gengar. Its typing is Ghost and Poison, which it has a lot of weaknesses, but normally you're going to run Focus Sash on Gengar. Yeah. The way that people have been using Gengar is let's take a look at the stats. They've just been using Focus Sash Gengar. It's faster than almost everything in the format. Not faster than Dragapult or Whimsicott, but most other relevant Pokemon is faster than. Faster than Durant, faster than Ninetales, and Alola Ninetales. So, yeah. Looking at Gengar's stats, I'm not going to go in depth on the bulk because it's all bad, but the speed and special attack are really, really significant. And the typing and the prevalent, like the popular Pokemon in the metagame are like Dragapult and, well, Dragapult, Togekiss, Sylveon, Primarina, Dusclops, all are weak to Gengar. There's like Grimmsnarl, Whimsicott. I think I already said Whimsicott. Yeah, of course, there's some Pokemon that make Gengar's life difficult. For example, Tyranitar and Excadrill. For example, Incineroar is not amazing. However, yeah, it's still a very good Pokemon. So, yeah, that's the first look at Gengar. Good. It's an offensive sweeper, and most of the time it runs Focus Sash to compensate for its poor bulk. In terms of moves, it has really good coverage moves. Let's go through these. It also has good support moves on Gengar. So, Perish Song, really good support move. Hypnosis, probably not worth using most of the time unless you're out of your mind. Shadow Ball, almost every Gengar is going to have. Dark Pulse, you wouldn't normally run. Let's see. Icy Wind is something that I think people use because of the speed changes to Generation 8. What you can do is lead Icy Wind Gengar and pair it with a Pokemon that's like mid-speed and be able to, because Gengar is so fast and it speeds the majority of the metagame and really threatens the Pokemon that are faster than it as well. A lot of times Gengar will be the fastest Pokemon in the field, which allows you to Icy Wind and then attack with a partner. And yeah, because basically the attacking with the partner will then go before most of the opponent's Pokemon if you, like, depending on how things shake up. But a lot of times it will allow your partner to attack before Pokemon that it wouldn't otherwise be able to. It also breaks Focus Sashes. It triggers effects like Assurance, for example. So yeah. It gets Will-O-Wisp, which is actually pretty valuable because, like I said, Tyranitar and Excadrill are two Pokemon that give Gengar trouble, so you have an option there to beat them. It gets Imprisoned. You could Imprison Trick Room. It gets Trick Room, like I mentioned. Yeah, I'm skipping over the physical moves because Gengar's physical attack is super low, so you wouldn't normally run physical attacking Gengar. Like, you could if you wanted to catch people off by surprise. However, you wouldn't normally do it. Gets Thunderbolt and Thunder. I'm mentioning these because having a fast Pokemon that can set electric terrain is a really good way to stop sleep. So I do think it's worth mentioning for that reason, although normally you'd prefer other coverage moves, I think. Sludge Bomb, we haven't talked about. That's going to be the main poison type attack you use, although some people use Sludge Wave as well. It now does get Encore. Taunt is another really good move. Taunt is another really, really good move. So, yeah. Other than that, it gets Focus Blast and Nasty Plot. Nasty Plot and Encore Nasty Plot and Encore are new moves. Encore is not as good as it would be without Dynamax, because you can use Dynamax to break an Encore. However, I do think that it's underutilized. I don't personally think Gengar has the move, like the space to run Encore. However, I do think it's a good move in general, just as an aside. Focus Blast and Nasty Plot are both good options for Gengar. Energy Ball is also a really good option for Gengar. If you were pairing it with like a Yawn Pokemon like Togekiss, you could use Max Grass to overwrite opponent's Misty Terrain, trying to stop Yawn, for example. Some people run Sludge Wave. I've seen Sludge Wave Gengar with Weakness Policy Togekiss. I've also seen Sludge Wave Gengar with Bisharp. Gengar Bisharp is a combination Justin Karras realized really early in the format and told me about, because basically Gengar will go for like max Ghost and will lower the defense stats, and then Bisharp will be able to attack. I think he also had Icy Wind, so you get an Icy Wind assurance like I mentioned. Yeah, and the cover, like having Bisharp is pretty nice to protect Gengar from like some of the Pokemon it struggles with, like Turn Excadrill. Although I don't know how much Bisharp actually helps there. It also gets Ally Switch. It also gets Dazzling Gleam. So if you were worried about Pokemon like Hydreigon, you could, in theory, run Dazzling Gleam. Other moves, Reflect type is a move I love, but I've never been able to make work. I always, every few years I come back to it and I try to make it work again. It gets 100% accurate Toxic. You wouldn't normally run this, but if you had a Dusclops problem and you, like, you're not gonna, like, I don't know, Pain Split Dusclops is, like, annoying for you, you could do that. Yeah, Paraslung, like I mentioned, Disable, and that's pretty much it. So overall, really good moves. Gengar has 4 move slot syndrome for sure. And now we have to talk about its Gigantamax move, which is Gmax Terror. Gmax Terror is like, they were like, hey, we feel bad that we took away Mega Evolution, so here, you can kind of have it back. Or like, it's the meme where it's like, can we have Mega Evolution? And it's like, we have Mega Evolution at home. And then Mega Evolution at home is Gmax Terror. That's Gengar. The way that Gmax Terror works is it's a trapping move. It adds Shadow Tag to both Pokemon once you hit Gmax Terror. I think it's on both, and I think it's Shadow Tag. I don't think it's a permanent trapping. I think like if Gengar switches or gets knocked out, then yeah, then the Pokemon are gone. So how good is this Pokemon? It's tough for me to say. Trapping opponents' Pokemon is really good, and Gigantamax Gengar is, like, Dynamax Gengar is good because Ghost lowers opponent's defense. Normally Dynamax Gengar is good because Ghost lower opponent's physical defense, and Poison will raise your own special attack. So depending on if your partner is physical or special, you could still, like, it's kind of like Fighting and Dark would be the other combination, where like Fighting raises your physical attack and Dark lowers the opponent's special defense. So regardless of what your partner is, you can always like make it more powerful using a Dynamax move from Gengar. I think that's something that's really interesting. The thing is, if you run Gmax Terror, you can't do that anymore. However, I still think Gmax Terror is worth using because the Shadow Tag effect is really good. So even though you're giving up the defense drop on a team that's more special or on a team that doesn't care about the defense drop, having a trapping move, even as an option, is really valuable, I think. So, yeah, we've already seen that Gengar is a pretty good Pokemon in this format. Like, definitely not amazing. Definitely not like a top tier. Definitely not a Pokemon that's everywhere, but a Pokemon that you have to respect if you see it. And I personally think is really good and has a lot of potential. I think it has more potential than it's given credit for right now. But the addition of Pokemon like Lapras and Dusclops' surge in popularity definitely make it difficult, I think, because even though it's a Ghost type, Dusclops being able to set Trick Room, like Gengar wants to take advantage of his high base speed stat, and so having Trick Room up is not favorable for it. And Gengar shouldn't be able to one-shot Dusclops. So I guess in conclusion, I think Gengar is an interesting Pokemon. I do think that Gmax Terror is at least an interesting tool. You don't have to use it, but the opponent now has to be aware of it at least. So I do think this boosts Gengar more than like wait. It doesn't like it's not like it gave it a useless attack or anything. The other thing I want to mention is that this is another tool in Perish Trap team's arsenal. I don't know how much like you're gonna want to be Dynamaxing your Gengar, but it's still, I think most Perish Trap teams should probably have Gengar on them already. So yeah, it's just another tool that you have to yeah, on Perish Trap teams as a secondary trapping option, which is interesting. So yeah, moving on, I think we have 3 left. I think the next one, I think it's Garbodor and then the Steel types. Garbodor I'm not going to talk too much about. The one thing I will say is that Shiny Garbodor is amazing. Might edit that out. Yeah, I'm gonna edit that out. Gengar has a Shiny for me, which is, I really like Gigantamax Gengar's Shiny for me. It's different than regular Gengar Shiny for me, which is, I think, interesting. Yeah. Okay, moving on. Gmax Garbodor. Garbodor's abilities. Aftermath is, I guess, good. If it gets knocked out by a contact move, the opponent will lose 1/4 of its health. It also has weak armor, which is something that's interesting. Any physical attack lowers your defense by 1, but raises your speed by 2. And then Stench, which I haven't seen used extensively, and I don't think is a great move on Garbodor. Garbodor has some stuff going for it, like, I don't know, it has some decent moves, like, well, let's just look at the stats for it, because I actually don't know if you run physical or special. I think special. Oh, God, you have to run physical. It's got okay bulk. Like, the bulk's not bad, but the typing defensively is not amazing. Like, poison is not a great defensive type. Decent attack, not great speed, but with weak armor, you can compensate for that. And decent moves, like, you have to run physical is the thing. So you get Gunk Shot, which is a really high base power poison move. You get Seed Bomb. You get Stomping Tantrum. You get Drain Punch. Yeah, honestly, bros, it's kind of rough for Garbodor. The thing is that Garbodor's Gmax move poisons both opponents, but the problem is that it doesn't raise, like, the power isn't raised. It still has the damage reduction of the poison type, similar to Machamp, but unlike Machamp, its move is, like, not as good. Like, using your Dynamax, your Gigantamax to poison both opponents is, like, it's just not worth it, in my opinion. Yeah, and with, like, I don't know, it's cool in theory. I think if Gmax Malador had not the damage reduction of poison types, you could maybe make a case for it. I still think it would be kind of a stretch, because poison is just not that good of a status condition in doubles. It's not badly poison. It's just 1/8 damage for, you know, on both Pokemon, but in a relatively fast metagame like VGC 2020, and when you consider that 1/8 is 1/16 for a couple turns when the opponent is Dynamaxed, I just don't personally think it's worth it to use your Dynamax on an effect like that, especially when, I mean, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. Like, maybe I'm wrong, but I just really don't think that this is gonna do, like, especially well. I'm trying to think, like, because you wouldn't really, like, you wouldn't beat Excadrill, you wouldn't really even beat Dusclops. You might, I mean, you do well versus Togekiss, I guess that's something. I don't know. Maybe on certain teams it could be okay, but I honestly really doubt it. I'm just gonna be completely honest. I don't think this Pokemon is especially good. In the current metagame, at least, with the Excadrill being popular, with Dragapult being popular, the chip damage just isn't enough, I think, when you're spending your Dynamax to get it off. So, yeah, I don't have that much to say about Garbodor. I like the design. I think it's really cool that it's all of N's toys from Black and White. I think that's really interesting. However, it's just not good enough, in my opinion. I don't really want to waste time on this. It's Garbodor. It's garbage. Next up is Duraludon. So Duraludon's a Pokemon that has seen success. It won the Dallas Regional Championships when Aaron Traylor used it. It has interesting stats. Terrible base special defense, decent HP, good defense, good special attack, and actually somewhat decent speed. 85 is not bad in this metagame at all. Dragon Steel type. Its ability, the one you want to use is Stalwart, which ignores Follow Me, so it has a really good ability. Here's the thing about Gmax Duraludon. It has, so I used regular Dynamax Duraludon in Dallas along with Aaron Traylor and Justin Karras. It has a lot going for it, in my opinion. There's, like, two sets that have been popular, or that I've seen the most used, which are Life Orb, which is an offensive set that doesn't really function as a Steel type, and instead functions just as, like, a fast sweeper that can get around Togekiss. One thing that's really good about Duraludon is that it's really good against Togekiss Dragapult, which is popping up earlier in the format, and resurges now, I guess. It's kind of resurged. It's been going up and down. The second set is an Assault Vest set, which, you know, uses bulk, rather than, like, the immediate power, but functions more as an actual Steel type, because Duraludon's base special defense is so bad that you need a lot to kind of buff it. Yeah. Next up is the move pool. So we have Flash Cannon. You're going to want in every Duraludon unless you want to run the Metal Burst. No, the, whatever that Steel type move is called. What's it called? I don't know. Flash Cannon is definitely going to be used in every Duraludon, or some kind of Steel type move at least, but most should have Flash Cannon. If you don't have Flash Cannon, you're out of your mind. Snarl is an option actually on an Assault Vest set. Let's see. Solar Beam I've actually seen used before for Gastrodon because it could be a problem, and for water types in general, but normally you'd want Thunderbolt. Oh, Solar Beam is also used for Rhyperior, I think. I believe it's slightly stronger. Dark Pulse was used. I think Sajin used this on a weakness policy set to help beat Dusclops. Like, you can Earthquake yourself, or, you know, find some way of activating your own weakness policy, and then max Dark Pulse into a Dusclops and do a lot of damage. I don't remember if it KOs. I think it's a roll. Body Press is used as well sometimes. Steel Beam, yeah, and Draco Meteor or Dragon Pulse. The thing about Duraludon is, even though it's a good Pokemon, what does the Gmax move do? I am not entirely sure. I'm going to be honest with you. It's a 140 base power move off of Draco Meteor, 130 off of Dragon Pulse, and it reduces PP, okay? However, Max Dragon lowers the attack of the opponent, and I'm going to be honest, I don't think that Gmax Depletion is better. Unless your team is specifically built to take advantage of, like, low PP of your opponent, Your opponent's like tiny PP, like you want them to run out of PP. I just don't see this move as any good. Frankly, I've been told that it doesn't work the way that it says here on Cerebi. I've been told that what it does is it takes 2 PP away from any move that was used already when the opponent was in. I haven't tested this myself because, frankly, even if it reduced 2 PP of all of their moves, I don't think it would be worth it. And that's just the truth. A lot of moves that are common right now are not 8 PP. They're more than 8 PP. The opponent normally will have more than 8 PP on their important moves, and so when your opponent has moves that like have a ton of PP and aren't in danger of running out of PP, then like Gmax depletion just it doesn't do enough, right? Let's say it took you used Gmax depletion for 3 turns in a row. That's 6 additional PP you remove from your opponent, but I don't know. I don't think it's worthwhile. I don't think it's significant. You could maybe build a team that took advantage of PP reduction and like trying to get rid of your opponent's PP, but for the most part, I don't think it's gonna be worth it. I'm just gonna say how it is. I just don't think it's gonna be worth it for the most part. So, yeah. I think that's pretty much all I want to say about Duraludon. It's just not better than Dynamax Duraludon, is the truth. Still, Duraludon is still a good Pokemon, but Gigantamax Duraludon should not have much use, in my opinion. And the last Pokemon is Copperajah, which is an interesting Pokemon. So, Copperajah is not a Pokemon that's seen a ton of use. It's actually seen very little use, surprisingly. It has a good ability in Sheer Force, which is a Life Orb, but it takes away your secondary effects of your moves. In terms of moves, you get Heavy Slam, you get Play Rough, you get Iron Head, you get High Horsepower, you get Superpower. Those are all really good moves. Rock Slide as well. Snarl, and you're not going to use most of the time. Outrage if you wanted, Taunt if you wanted, Zen Headbutt, Power Whip, that's a really big one, Stone Edge, Heat Crash, we've already talked about Play Rough, High Horsepower, Body Press, yeah. So, the stats are interesting as well. It has really high base HP, but nice defenses, but not too high, and a low base speed stat, and a really good attack stat. So, overall, the stats are really good, and the defenses, although they're low-ish, like, with a super high base HP, you can afford to invest in them more, so it's not a super frail Pokemon. I'm really surprised Copperajah has not seen more use. I think it's more of a function of the metagame not being favorable towards it, rather than it not being a good Pokemon. I think it could, like, with its coverage moves, I think it could be super good, personally. Yeah, honestly, the coverage moves are just really impressive on this thing, and yeah, like a Steel type with a Fairy move and a Fire move is kind of crazy, in my opinion. And a Grass move, I don't know. I think that's really interesting. Like, you can beat Gastrodon with this thing. It's a good Trick Room Sweeper. I think probably the main reason it hasn't been used more is because the other Trick Room Sweepers are like Rhyperior and Conkeldurr, and Torkoal, and those are all like, I don't know, maybe more threatening, but I do think the Copperajah should have been used more than it has been. The Gigantamax form is interesting. This is one I honestly don't know. I really don't know, guys. Gmax Steel Surge sets a Steel type Stealth Rock on the field. So basically, anything switching in takes... What is this music? Okay. I don't know what that is. Anything switching in takes Steel type damage. Well, Steel type Stealth Rock. So it takes 1/8 damage if it's neutral to Steel. It takes 1/16 damage if it resists Steel. It takes 25% damage if it's weak to Steel. And it takes 50% damage if it's 4 times weak to Steel, aka 2 Steel type weaknesses. The problem is that the opportunity cost for the Steel type Stealth Rock is your defense boost for Max Steel Spike on both your Pokemon, which is really relevant. The truth of the matter is that I think that regular Dynamax Copperajah is probably going to be better than Gigantamax Copperajah. However, I could be wrong. I think there are certain cases, like if you intend to always lead with Copperajah, where actually getting the Steel type damage is interesting because it breaks Focus Sash and it deals, like, for example, let's say I lead Copperajah and my opponent for some reason leads Sylveon. Being able to get the Steel type Stealth Rock off immediately, the Steel Bit or whatever it's called, means that Sylveon is I can kind of I don't want to say safely launch that like a move into Sylveon, but if I launch a Steel type move into Sylveon, and it switches out into like something like Rotom and I don't do any damage, when Sylveon comes back in, it's now at 75%. And there are like a fair bit of Pokemon that are weak to Steel, such as Togekiss, such as Sylveon, such as Tyranitar, and so a lot of Pokemon are running Focus Sash this metagame as well, such as Excadrill. Sometimes Dragapult will run it, although normally if it's Sash Dragapult, it'll be in the lead, but yeah. And the chip damage is pretty significant if you think your opponent's going to switch a lot. Rhyperior is another Pokemon that takes 25% from the Steel Bit, so actually, as I talk about it more, it's tricky. I'm not really sure. I think the team would have to be intending to use Copperajah early. I think that's a big deal. Like, leading it and just launching the attack right away. For it to be maximum effectiveness. Otherwise, I think probably just defense boost is better. So if you want to use Copperajah early, I think maybe Steel Bit is good. And if you want to use Copperajah late, then maybe defense boost is good. But yeah, those are all the new Pokemon and kind of what I think about them. I think Copperajah is, I guess, pretty... I like Copperajah. I think it could be good. I'm interested to see how Series 3 shakes... Or Series 4 shakes out, because it's going to be, like, not that different from Series 3. We got 5 new Gigantamax, and I'm kind of writing 2 of them off immediately in Duraludon and Garbodor. Feel free to prove me wrong. That'd be cool. But, yeah, that's just my opinion. Yeah. And I think that's pretty much it. I think that's all I want to say about these Gigantamax Pokemon. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this analysis, and I'll see you next time. Peace.